With Urza getting his pre-Spark representation, it is pretty impressive how accurately broken he is to the story. But Wizards wasn't always this good at their legendary representation. Legendary creatures in Magic usually have story significance, but Magic has a tendency to not release them immediately, especially in the earlier years, which inevitably leads to disappointment with some legends who don't live up to the hype. That's what we are here to talk about today. A few rules for the list. If there is one disappointing iteration of the character, but the other iterations make up for it, if it is the same character without too much story change, it is exempt. For example, Miri Cat Warrior might have been on this list if it wasn't for Miri Weatherlight Duelist, but Miri the Cursed is a different enough version that wouldn't have affected either way. Also, the disappointment is subjective here, at least to a certain extent, story purposes. In other words, I can't fill this list with Boros legends. At number 10 is Volrath the Fallen, arguably one of the most hyped characters of all time, or at least in Magic. He was incredibly pertinent as an antagonist during Tempest, Wrath block, and Volrath gets a card in Nemesis block of 2000. And he actually dates back a bit more, I'm pretty sure, but I'm not entirely sure. He arguably was one of the characters who gave the Nemesis set the name. He served as what TV Tropes calls the dragon for Phyrexia. Basically means someone who served as the main antagonist even though we know there were antagonists above him, such as Eogmith. Volrath, he was super important. One thing to note was that Volrath was already very, very smart, obviously. Experimental and involved a lot of blue cards in addition to his black cards, yet his main card is just mono black with a pump ability. He is this low on the list because his innate power as a card is pretty well represented in actuality despite not being like 8 or 9 mana. Even if he's not competitive, the pump ability is flavorful to selfishly use subjects to make himself grow stronger. And damn can he grow strong. But he's cunning and intelligent and very blue and very sadistic, not just a brute. Having an ability that costs double blue to tap target creature would have fulfilled a lot of these requirements, but a blue-black Volrath is what, well, most people want anyways. Even Mark Rosewater didn't like the design. Quote, "The challenge to design was to create a mono-black creature that felt like a shapeshifter. We ended up designing a card that allowed you to discard a creature card to temporarily change size. This is one of the Weatherlight crew designs that I'm unhappy with. Although not most unhappy, we'll get to that one. While it did capture a shapeshifter feel, it didn't quite capture the cleverness of Volrath. One of these days, I'd love to redesign him as the clever blue-black shapeshifter he was supposed to be." For number 9, Ambassador Liquidus. Quote, "Liquidus was a talented blue mage possessing the ability to hypnotize people and implant false memories, which he used against Kurtar and numerous members of the Cabal in order to convince them to trust him." What does milling have to do with mind control? He was a very smart and kind of minor antagonist. He might have benefited from being blue-black as well. He's had black minions who were, tougher than him. A blue and black card to mind control creatures might have been OP, but they have gotten around that creatively over the years. Just look at Silumgar. Or even look at people's libraries or hands due to his apparent telekinesis. But no, give this absurdly OP monstrosity mill. Okay. Ooh, he's an infinite mana sink. If a card's use is that some other cards have to be broken enough to make infinite mana, that isn't very epic. For number 8, Kurtar apparently held his own in pit fights involving the strongest and most versatile creatures at the time, where one of the physically weakest was the 3/4. He is a 2/2 whose only ability involves a reference to him killing himself. Moving on. For 7, there will be a lot of group legends on this list. Let's start off with most of the Blade Wings aside from Risen. They're like the blandest dragons ever. Nothing to them really. And even if the first Blade Wing was good for the time, he wasn't nearly as flavorfully interesting as his contemporaries in the same cycle like Viscera the Dreadful and Arcanus the Omnipotent. They are very, very flexible given the time period. The Future Sight Bladewing had a weird ability but in a similar cycle, and didn't really do much on his own. The Risen is way too different to save his descendants and living counterparts from his list. He's a freaking skeleton. For number 6, most of the legends from Legends, ironically, the set was made by friends of the creator, maybe some of the designers too. They didn't even represent the powers said friends gave them, which is the most disappointing part in my opinion. Like, you're telling me that D&D characters are 5/5 vanillas like the campaign you're playing with? No speed, no intelligence, no nothing, no prediction. I mean, granted, the level up mechanic wouldn't come for many years and that would have been a lot to swallow. But why are just some better than others? Why do some of their abilities not match the color pie like at all? The colors blue, white, and black usually combine to create some sort of equilibrium of colors, something above morality itself, and is very controlling, strict, and not going on a fucking rampage. Why the hell is the artifact looking dragon have rampage? Though partially redeemed by younger versions printed more recently, the Elder Dragons might have been considered epic at the time, but they weren't godlike. There were even creatures bigger than them at the time, like Colossus of Sardia and Force of Nature. So why are those story-wise like the nastiest creatures at the time and even able to deal with planeswalkers better than most? Oh my god, don't even get me started on their upkeep. For number 5, Ludovic and Ulrich were very hyped creatures and foreshadowed from the very same hype block. Ludovic, an evil scientist who interacts with flesh, so make him an partner commander that just draws cards based on opponent life loss. That's dumb. Why can't you just deal with graveyard shenanigans or sacrifice creatures or, I don't know, something? Granted, there's more than enough of those commanders. People have been desperately wanting werewolves to be more powerful in Commander. I can count Ulrich story-wise because he is the uncontested alpha, so why not help your pack? No, I use him for a red-green fight deck in EDH. Rorik Thar is going to be my wolf leader still, okay? That's how bad he is as a wolf leader. He isn't. Ulrich doesn't help this tribe, and there are bigger wolves than him in the game. I mean, he fights non-wolf creatures. Wolves fight each other to see who's what gives. Baron Master Wizard could make an entire fucking continent explode, and yet his card is bouncing shit by sacrificing other shit. Cabal Patriarch is one of the worst legends since Homelands, and yeah, he was an important antagonist for a weirdly long time, but he's like in a TV show after you beat a badass, and you just have this lame fuckwit villain who's supposedly even better or cooler or whatever, like, I don't know. Like Brother Blood, he ain't that cool after you beat Slade. That's basically what the Cabal Patriarch is. And here's where it gets painful. At number 3, unlike the set Legends, Homelands' story is actually pretty good. Unlike Legends, Homelands is considered the worst set of all time. Limited looks miserable as you die to yourself more than anyone else because of all the drawbacks. Part of it was that the story actually came first. Many theorized that the bad designs were creatures rebelling against planeswalkers overusing them. Baron Seigneur is literally the main antagonist because of bad card design. Just long story short. I'm not even kidding. I mean, yeah, kind of, I don't know. Okay, I'm going to rank them all in order. The best is probably Soraya the Falconer, who is a solid card, but only accidentally. Her card was changed that so instead of boosting a subtype that borderline didn't exist, it actually supports a pretty solid archetype with not much competition for a start. And that's the end of the genuinely good stuff. Ravika, Wizard Savant, has a pretty bad drawback that makes her slow in normal play. She's ranked high because she can be used as a weird Isochron Scepter commander where you can untap everything. Autumn Willow was only good for the time as basically an anti-control beater, but nowadays there are just so many better options than a 6 mana, sometimes hexproof, sometimes shroud. Aaron the Relentless is an alright beater who protects himself, but doesn't do much else and dies to bolt. Icen's Shade was also good for the time, but doesn't do much anymore. At least Willow can be more flexible with her applications, and perhaps with Painter Servant Unbound you can use him as a commander, and just Painter Servant to make him protection from everything. Joven can be okay against the right deck. Usually not okay though. It's very rare. Baron Sanger is an alright card if he didn't cost fucking 8 mana. Jesus Christ. Raksha the Slayer is a 3/3 for 5 with reach. The second ability is so specific that you will ignore it most of the time. And even if the planets align and does make it work, it doesn't do its job properly. Chandler is so specific that he's basically a 3/3 for 5. Grandmother Sanger is a 5-mana 3/3 with an ability that isn't as much overly specific, but is useless by that point in the game. Daughter of Autumn, even by creature damage redirector standards, she can only take 4 points of damage. Anyways, what? This card is absurdly bad. Veldrain, either a 7-mana 5/5 with no abilities, or a 10-mana 2/5 that is very rarely unblockable. What a great card. Irini Singer is one of the most unfathomably specific, underwhelming, and useless legendary creatures in the game, and despite the cool art, ignoring how she looks like one of Magic 8's surprises, is actually my least favorite legend in the entire game. At least the bad legends have some sort of board presence, even if they are overpriced. She's a damn 2/2 for 4. At number 2, I could see a lot of argument switching these numbers with number 1, but Corona False God and Okagachi are poor representations of modern legendary gods, not like Theros gods, but like these are Eldrazi level beasts. Okagachi is physically stronger than the spirits it was supposedly leading. Okagachi should be an indestructible beast that can casually just exile just about everything. It should literally have indestructible, according to this entire story, which was about obtaining indestructibility, and it was stolen from him. There was even an amazing theory by Gatherer user Scythe the Wraith, or this card destroyed. Quote, you guys are all talking about how Final Judgment can and can't exile Progenitus, but what you don't understand is that Okagachi, the creature in the art from Final Judgment, is Progenitus. The flavor text from Progenitus is the soul of the world has returned, and some info on Okagachi taken from MTG Salvation Wiki states that it was the soul of the world, the very first kami, as old as the plane itself. It also says at the end of Okagachi's story that he was eventually defeated, and so that would explain how he has returned, even if he returned in a different plane in a different form. Is it absolutely not amazing that WotC made this connection between planes over about 5 years and no one noticed? Progenitus is just Final Judgment in creature form. If this was common knowledge, could someone please inform me? This just blew my mind, especially figuring it out myself. You should be the writer for WotC, not their current. Okagachi still should be on Progenitus' level, has been reduced down to a political weakling. Another 5-mana god who should have been Progenitus level, you know? Corona False God. I assumed it was False God because she manipulates people by leading races, but constantly betraying them by pretending to be a god of someone else after she attacks after being betrayed. That would have been amazing flavor, but apparently story-wise, it's a genuine godlike entity who is a combination of a Chroma, the control finisher, and the scariest white creature at the time, Phage, someone who kills you and the opponent. That's kinda tough. And this lame tribal booster. This is a lame tribal booster. Why? At least the Elder Dragon Legends had impressive powers for their time. What are these two morons doing together as just a downgrade? This is so bad.
Number 1 is not gonna surprise many veterans of the series. It's Gerard. He's the main protagonist. He basically commits antagonist genocide. That isn't like Yawgmoth, because that's Urza's job. But he's a 3/4 who dies to like all of them, only gains some life, and only taps creatures. I mean, Tasabo Tavak makes it all more difficult to make a Gerard that can kill someone with protection from legends. Even then, though, it's still kind of absurd in my eyes. Gerard could have been a lot better. And I think most people expect it. Wait, what?
Mark Rosewater explains it better than I can. Quote, with all that said, this card is to me, by far, the biggest failure of all the Weatherlight crew cards. First off, Gerard is a red-white character. His card was even in Apocalypse, the enemy color set. I have no idea why we didn't choose to make him red-white. Second, his two abilities don't work together mechanically or fit together creatively. Third, for a card that has so much anticipation, we didn't push it at all. It just ends up being a pretty flavorless card that no one wanted to play. So, while I know it was made many years ago, let me officially apologize for this card. I hope in the future we'll be able to make a card that does Gerard more justice. My question is why?
Wait, what do you mean? So they made a new card for Volrath that does do justice for the character? But, I mean, it's just one placement on the list. I can take him off. What? No, that's a lie. No. Sorry, but after 20 years of storytelling, they couldn't have just happened to make two important placements on my list. Is that Gerard? Is that the number one spot? So that's invalidated too?
Yes, now! Right! I can